You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings. But now I shine with your reflection on me. I'm getting back up on my feet. That you showed up was written in my palm. You are a statement, explode like a bomb. I get to push myself to victory. You make me winner. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win in every way. You showed me how to spread my wings. Yes, I'm the winner of the day. You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win in every way. You showed me how to spread my wings.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, and we are back again with the Plan to Prosper show, our podcast for the 2023. And we are here today talking about something that's very critical for entrepreneurs, business owners, 9 to 5, our hobbyists, faith-based startups. We're going to be talking about mental health and how important it is that we take care of ourselves and our community. When we think about mental health and all that's happening around the world with so many people with gun violence, and we think about all these legislators making policies and all the racism that's happening in the United States of America. And we think about how entrepreneurs are being affected, how they may not be getting contracts because of the color of your skin, or because you're a woman, or because you are different, or because your hair is short or long. This show is just dedicated, just talking with our guest, Renee, that's going to help us walk through things we can do to make us feel better, fit whole, and ask for help, because it's so very important. When you own your own company, it's different than when you're working for someone else. Because when you work with someone else, you're dependent on that person to pay you at the end of that week or 2 weeks of that month. But when you own your own company, you are the person that's bringing in the income, making sure other people have keep their jobs, making sure you're paying other staff. And that's a level of what is a good word of leadership, of balance, and commitment that you have. And sometimes people get worried about, can they make payroll? Can they pay their staff? Are they bringing enough income? How do they diversify their income? And then when you have issues that we are facing today in the United States of America and across the world around racism and sexism, it affects if you could get a contract, if people are going to do business with you. All of that plays such a very important, and that's another layer of something you have to be concerned about. And if you're a Black woman in America, we have all of these different standards that we have to continue jumping hoops against. And it should be that all of this that we're going through, when is enough of, why can't we just be people? Why did the color of your skin has to matter? And so you may have to reach out and seek counseling to be able to manage the day-to-day world views and opinions of you. And so working with Renee and having the opportunity to understand how her company helped bring balance to so many people's lives that engage in some type of trauma or be able to figure out where we need to go next. And so, Mark, if you would bring Renee up, we can start our conversation. Hello, Renee. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing good.
You're doing excellent. I was sharing with them, and I don't know if you hear it, is that your company provides something that we need more so than ever in this economy as we look at violence, school violence, and we look at violence in the workplace, and we look at just everyday problems that we are having. And we are looking for someone to talk to look at different types of isms, racism, sexism, womenism, layers of being a black woman in this environment, how you have to come to the table with not just yourself, but everything else that you bring to the table. And then owning your own company and making sure you have enough contracts and business to pay people. So I tell people it is to own your own company. I don't think people really realize the things you go through to make it work. So tell us about your company, how long you've been in business, and the services that you provide.
We're Renewed Strength Counseling Services. We are a mental health private practice located in the Triangle area in North Carolina, but we work with clients across the state, all over North Carolina, as well as in a few other states, such as New Jersey and Florida. There's been a
Mhm.
need for mental health services, especially among clinicians of color, to represent in those different areas. Definitely during COVID and a little bit prior to then, we've been in Florida and New Jersey. And we provide mental health services to individuals, couples, and families who work with children at our organization. And we just try to provide that safe space so that people can try to be their best self, whatever that looks like, and trying to help, find their strengths, find out what they're good at, as well as find out what resources are available to them.
Oh, thank you so very much. You know, we are coming off of COVID. I think about before COVID, then I think about what we went through during COVID, and now I'm looking at what we're going through now. It's like a big transition, and you trying to find out where do I fit in at? Because I know my life before COVID, I was just like a standstill fog during COVID, and now after COVID, I'm still trying to figure out as if I'm trying to figure out who I am now. Did you find that to be something that in your practice of people are having trying to adjust to that?
Absolutely. We actually included as part of our intake when we take on new clients, we're asking them how did COVID-19 affect them, what they were doing during the pandemic, how did they function, and how well they did or didn't do. And definitely asking about loss. And so COVID was a loss of a lot of things, including family members, people, but also loss of freedom, loss of autonomy, and just loss of the way of life that we're used to. And so working with people as they come in after COVID, we definitely have to have that question there. And several of them are still figuring it out and potentially thinking, that they may be totally changed, they think. However, some things are coming back to remembrance of things that they used to love to do or that they actually can't allow themselves to do now. It doesn't have to be limiting at this point.
I think about this today is that we was had this life before COVID, and then now we was working from home, and now they're asking us to come back in the workplace, and we are like, that's going to be different now. It's like I end up being safe home, and I thought I was being productive, and now you're asking me to come back to environment. But now in the workplace, you see how many people are being killed in workplaces and kids at school. But you just think about just two major shootings in the last couple of weeks. But
Mhm.
when we was home, we was safe. Now you asking me to come back into a world that's not safe.
Yeah, that is hard for a lot of people, and they've become accustomed to working remotely. And some of them are really good at it. some of them are great at it. And so the ones that are thriving well, it's a good thing. However, some people and some services or opportunities are only available outside of the home. And so for some people, they have to go out to work, and they're not afforded that same luxury of working remotely. But the people that can do it well, they are trying to stay at home and negotiate different opportunities and work options, and even starting up their own business, doing things for themselves, becoming entrepreneurs, so that they can do a better balance versus having to go and to the grind every day.
Yeah, because you think about, you've been home, and then if you say, okay, now I got to get out, I got to get in the traffic, I got to get in the carpool line, I got to find a part to go to work, and so now you're thinking all this stuff you got to do before you actually start to work, and that can mess with your mental health. Being that 2 years, you have got comfortable with not doing that, not have to think about that, and
Hmm.
so I see this as a transition for a lot of people to try to move from before COVID, during COVID. Now, how do I function back into this environment that brings so many unknowns with work and not flexibility? And so, do you
Hmm.
find that people need therapy to work through those situations?
Can you ask that again? I didn't quite hear you.
Do you find that people are using therapists to work through that situation, that transition?
Yes, absolutely. And so um, there's lots of negotiations that people are doing with their bosses.
Mhm.
Like I said, trying to start their own business, seeing if they have the stamina to do that, and just trying to figure out what that balance looks like instead. And the work environment is going to have to continue to evolve. And
Mhm.
I don't believe that any company or organization's going to be able to be fruitful and successful unless they have some type of hybrid model, trying to negotiate and work with people when they can be their best. And it's a little tough for some organizations to figure that part out, but they're
Mhm.
going to have to. There, people have gotten a sense of it. They've actually, some of them have been very productive, like you said, and
Mhm.
they don't want to add to all of
Mhm.
the other unknowns, um, with trying to go into an office each day when they potentially can do the job even better at from home.
Yeah.
They've got to
Mark.
negotiate.
Yeah. Mark was saying some folks are having to adjust to this new hybrid model.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a thing. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm at home. Thursday, Friday, I got to go into the office. Wow.
Yeah.
Um,
When COVID happened, we were able to adjust pretty swiftly. We didn't have a choice, number one, but two, I had already been doing telehealth work for a while. And
uh,
so I had certain setups and things that I knew to be right. But as an agency, we had, I think, 3 or 4 staff members kind of starting at the same time that COVID was happening. We were shutting down. So then onboarding new people, there had to be a whole nother process on what telehealth looked like and all the parameters you have to have in place, what your room should look like, the safety and security of the clients, confidentiality, your
mhm,
devices, and all of that.
mhm,
And so we had to do some quick training and some hand holding with clinicians because it wasn't comfortable. So several people
mhm,
were so used to the in-person work, which
mhm,
is valuable. We absolutely need it. And so there's certain things that we see about a person non-verbally that helps us understand how they're feeling versus what they're actually saying, and you can't see but so much of a person in the screen. And depending on how close they are to the screen, you might miss a facial expression if they're not as close. And so those different nonverbal cues we had to really work hard to see. um, and then just the atmosphere of an office sometimes gives more autonomy and confidentiality for people. So having to do therapy at home where you also have all of the people there that maybe you have conflict with just wasn't conducive to a lot of folks in therapy. So some people are really happy that we're back in the office. Other folks are like, no, we could keep doing this. I'll just go to my car. I'll just sit in the garage. I'll just take a walk while we talk. And we figure it out. We figure it out. And so several of our clinicians are on a hybrid model right now, but we would not have survived as a practice. No, none of the clinicians would have if they couldn't do telehealth, and most of them are using some type of hybrid model now.
Well, Mark made a good point. This dealing with the new rules for coming back to work past COVID and work environment. And what I found out, people dress different from before COVID, doing COVID, and coming back to work. And you're like, you're not home. So you need to try to change that wardrobe just a little bit. And people are looking at them, but why? You know, and that and I
The
go
decorum, the work place nuances and rules and regulations people weren't used to because you were at home. You could do almost anything while you're working. You can vacuum, you can clean up, as long as you weren't on a Zoom, or if you were on a Zoom, put it on mute and you could still multitask. You can't do that when you actually go into the office. And like you said, the dress code, maybe the way people talk, language that they use, and all kinds of other things you do with your body or don't do. People can sit at home and maybe pick their fingers and their toenails, but you can't do that at the office. And so that decorum has to come back into place. And I think it helps some people socially. We saw a lot of social issues during COVID for children and for adults. Huge. And so some of them are paralyzed by fear. They already had some social anxiety. It has exacerbated. Some people are still upset and concerned about catching COVID. So we do deal with that a lot, but we encourage our clients there's different ways to try new things. And so as we work with them, we're working with several people on, getting back out there and checking out the world and being as safe as possible.
What are some of the trends that you see happening in the therapy world or industry?
Big trend is telehealth.
Okay.
What that also means for clinicians is that we are also not beholden to one particular place. And so when COVID also happened, like I shared, we were already working in one state, but we expanded to probably 15 states at that time because of the COVID restrictions, COVID lack of restrictions. They just needed clinicians, they needed nurses, doctors, anywhere. So as long as you could prove that you had a license in one state, you could practice somewhere else virtually as well. And so we hopped on a lot of those options. That's why we're still in New Jersey now, because there's a definite need there for those clinicians. And so what that ended up happening for people is that, okay, instead of me having to apply for another board license, I can just work in that other state for this period of time. But once that changed, we all got used to having clients in multiple states, maybe clients overseas. I still have some clients overseas. I had them before COVID. I got more during COVID, and I still have them. But there's certain jurisdictions and regulations that I have to follow in order to see them legally and within compliance. But what we ended up finding out, several clinicians, we have a bug to see the world and travel as well. So if I go to New Jersey, I want to be able to still see my clients in North Carolina. I want to still be able to see my clients that live in Japan or wherever. And we wanted that type of autonomy. So now you're seeing that there are different boards that have these compacts now where clinicians can get one license in one state, but it covers them from multiple states. And so the sky is the limit on travel. The sky is the limit on types of clients. And if you have a certain niche and maybe you do something very specific with couples, you could see all couples in North Carolina with that same niche, but also Virginia, Texas, and Wyoming, if you were licensed there. Social workers, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so we're a little bit behind on that game. The clinical mental health counselors have their compact rolling, and it's a beautiful thing. So we are following suit. And so you'll see that a lot more where people will look for a clinician. It's not going to matter what state they're in, as long as that person meets their needs in that niche that they're looking for. Maybe they want somebody that works with children and has a focus with trauma. Maybe they want somebody that works with women and perinatal mental health, but they can't find anybody that looks like them in their state. Well, I can get licensed in their state, and I'll be a clinician of color that they could access potentially.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. So Mark wants you to talk more about telehealth and how the youth engaged in telehealth. And is that something they're comfortable with because they tech savvy, or do you find that they still want to come in?
The children are kind of a mixture. So if they don't have enough privacy, they're going to want to come in.
Okay.
And of course, as a parent, when you set somebody up with, you set a child up with an adult to talk to, you're going to want to know, what are they talking about? What's going on? It makes sense, right? But that time with the clinician has to be confidential, but you want to make sure they're safe. So that makes sense. So we do see some kids that want to come in. Some practices have gone totally virtual, and they have certain things in place for children where kids, and we have that in our practice too, where we have certain kits that we share with the parent. These are the things you'll need to get if they're going to only be virtual. They need color pencils, they need this notebook, they need these types of papers, and I'm going to actually mail some other items to you, some worksheets and things like that we'll work on throughout the time. And yes, you're right, kids are tech savvy, so we've done trainings for our clinicians with other practices who are really good with the telehealth process
Mhm,
and play
mhm,
therapy with children, and
mhm,
they have
mhm.
certain methods that they've taught us. But we've also done some other internal training where we're teaching the clinicians how to use some technology, interactive screens and work, all kinds of little games and things like that our clinicians can use that keep the kids engaged. And so yes, and we also know time wise, a lot of times our sessions are about an hour, about 45 minutes to an hour. We're going to keep the children's time low on like 5 minutes or lower so that they can stay engaged as much as possible, and then they're on to the next thing. We don't want to take up a lot of their time because their attention span is not but so long.
Oh, so how much has technology helped this field? Do you think that technology is reaching people that otherwise cannot come in? Like, I'll give you a good example: rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
Doing it telehealth, like, okay, I can help them to get this, but there's nobody in this rural 3 counties that have a specialty. Do you see technology helping reaching that population?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's definitely a need for that because I'm in the triangle area. So in our area, there are a multitude of specialties and clinicians and doctors. If you need a specialty for a particular surgery or whatever, you're going to find that person. In those rural areas, you're going to have to travel to our area to get those people. And so the technology has brought our specialties, our knowledge base, our experiences to them, whereas they don't have to travel in or not get that specialty in their zone, in their area. And so I think it's been a huge help to really get the services to where they're needed.
And something you mentioned is, I took this note, is reaching people of color, people that look like us. And if you're in rural areas, trying to find someone that look like us in order to be able to talk to them. Is that a gap in services? And then how are you finding ways to close that gap?
It's a gap in a lot of services. I would
Mhm.
like to say I don't know the exact statistics, but in the clinical realm for clinical mental health, we're finding there's a lot of clinicians of color, and that's a good thing. However, as soon as somebody opens up or they say, I'm available to take clients, then they are immediately full. um, so they're there, people are finding them, and then they get full, which is a good thing. So then that means education wise, we've got to train more clinicians of color. We have to sure that people are culturally responsive, even folks that are
Mhm.
not of color, uh, they can be clinically, culturally responsive and support our population just as well as possibly I can. And just
Right,
because I'm a clinician of color doesn't mean I get it all the time, so
right.
somebody else could get it.
Mhm.
But it's they're there, and I feel like we could have more people. We just also have to be able to say that this is a lucrative business. This is a well respected field.
Mhm.
Uh, there are opportunities for growth, and people to understand that in uh, some of the things that are glamorous about it, but also the things that are a little sad about it, because we're working with people who have challenges or some struggles, and so the stories are not always going to be great. There's not going to be some silver linings after different sessions, and so you got to be built to work it with that and really care about helping somebody get to where they want to go. So people are there. So we just got to keep getting them trained so that they can help take on some of the cases.
I'm glad you talked about that. Um, and so I'm gonna give you an example. I'm in rural area, and I have. How would I start looking for resources for needs for my children if I'm in a rural area? And it doesn't matter whether you're in North Carolina, Tennessee, Mississippi. It's rural. How
Mm-hmm.
do we um, get for them to know where to go to start looking for the services at? Because I found out to be so many times when I visit different states in rural areas, it's like we don't know. We would like to have therapy. I would like to have my children at. What do you think some things we could do to help with that?
So I found some good resources with the primary care doctors and pediatricians. They're usually connected with some mental health practices, either in a particular area or they know of a wider net resource. And so if people are already taking their kids to a pediatrician, they can definitely ask more questions on how to get connected to a clinician. The other thing, of course, is the internet. It's right there at their fingertips. And so let's say they're looking for um, a Hispanic, Spanish speaking, Hispanic female who
Mm-hmm.
specializes in EMDR with children. They can literally
Okay.
search for that in their area. Now, mind you, it may not pop up in the rural area, but they can say in their state, in Tennessee.
Okay. Okay.
And it's possible that that person has set their system up so that they can be searchable that way. I know we're searchable in our area for Black therapists, which
Okay.
is pretty broad. We can
Mm-hmm.
pare it down some, but that's one of our search top targets. And so if that person's looking for that type of specific clinician that can help their child, they can do the searches. But then there's also websites that are helpful, such as uh, therapists for Black girls and therapists for Black men. Uh,
Okay.
Several clinicians advertise there, but also those websites advertise through social media. So they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, and so they may have different sponsored ads at different times. And so some people are able to tap in that way. There's also clinicians uh, that Spanish speaking clinicians, and so they have resources there too. Other ways that I've seen really helpful is kind of connecting to like local universities or schools. So if the person connects with their local university or school, they usually have some way to support people in
Mhm.
finding a clinician. And then the best way above all of those is starting with their insurance plan. So whoever their insurance provider is with, they start there and ask about mental health services, and they're going to tell you exactly who is uh, licensed in your area or licensed in your state that you could also see. And that way, it helps cut out a lot of things because you could find a clinician to do exactly what you would like and understand you and talk with you. But if they may not take your insurance. And so
Oh,
you got to
wow.
start with the insurance first.
Okay. Step one, insurance.
Hmm.
So let me shift to therapists and the police department. You always hear about if people have a mental health issues when gun violence is out there. And now I see a shift that police departments want to have a therapist on call or assigned to them. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's very needed. In
Okay.
some areas, they've always had what they call like a mental health team or crisis team that's associated with the police department. So there'll be specific policemen that are trained to help de escalate and trained to notice different concerns versus like a domestic violence situation. They would know this is more mental health, but then they bring in the real therapist or whoever if it fits. And then those crisis teams are usually associated with these, and they'll be accessible. They kind of always been there, but there's more need now, and the sensitivity may not be there as much because there's such a need. So I think in my area, on my police department is pretty large for our area, and
Mhm.
they had a mental health team of trained policemen. However, they found out, oh, we don't have because they're answering a crisis call over here at 2 o'clock. Well, we need them over here at 4 to another spot. There was just a lot of need. And so some of them are now taking on social workers or clinicians to be part of the environment. But it's not just, they don't necessarily just go out when there's a call for a crisis. They're helping train the staff, the police department. They are also helping with de-escalation tactics, as well as understanding what mental health is, and then also supporting. There's a whole team of clinicians that support people that are those first responders. There's a special niche for them in making sure that they understand that they can also talk to somebody if they're going through some things. And then there are opportunities for people to go out with the policemen to a crisis call, but it would have to meet, it has to meet certain parameters. And so they have certain things now and protocols to do that. I think it's a great thing as long as they stay within those parameters and everybody works within their zone. We definitely know if there's a weapon in the vicinity, or the person is brandishing a weapon, that is not a clinician's job at that point. It has to be the first responders. Even in our like, if I had a client in my office who had a gun, I am not just going to sit there and continue to talk to them. My first call is 911. My first call is get everybody out the building. And so we still have to do that, even if the person is experiencing a mental health crisis. And so we're already trained in some of those tactics just in general. Some of us are more specialized. And so we do certain things to make sure our environments are as safe as possible. But I'm glad that there are clinicians that are helping these different first responder populations, the police department, EMS, all of them, because it's very well needed.
But you know what I have noticed is that you don't hear about that. You think about domestic violence. You would think they would have someone in that field go to the domestic violence scene with them. You hear about mental health issue, you would think that that person would be in the vicinity. They may not be in the car with the police officer, but they would arrive and be on the scene. I have noticed that you don't hear that. And when I done some research, you don't see that in the research or in the police report or on the TV or anything, that they had someone, a person with that background on site with them. It is after the fact than during the fact. So why is it that I reckon they're not using them to go on those calls as much, or advertising that there is somebody on site with them? You think that's something that we need to look at for policy? Because when you think about it, how many times, you watch TV and you hear about a scene, but they never mention we had somebody with that on site to work with them, work through that process?
Well, I think it's two things. So the news is the news. They're going to report on, unfortunately, the most, salacious situations and tragedies, unfortunately. And those are going to be the ones you hear about. But I would say this: if you haven't heard about it, it's probably because it went well.
Okay.
There wasn't a major crisis. Nobody got killed. You see what I'm saying? Those people were there. But it goes back to what I was explaining before, too. If there's already a weapon on site, it's not as much talking that you can do.
Okay.
There's not as much clinical work that we can do, and we are not trained to de-escalate with weapons. We're trained to get help.
Okay. That answered that question.
Yeah. So if there's already been domestic violence happening and somebody's getting hurt, we are not trained to interfere with that. It's the after effect or prior to that we would have been involved with. Or let's say they've had a major argument and there's about to be a fight, and they get the police there in time, and you have somebody that can help negotiate and talk to the people before there's actually violence, you wouldn't hear about it.
Right. You know what I think would be, and I think this would be really cool too, if you bring people down for, unless I'm saying domestic abuse, and there is a therapist at the police department that can intervene then as they go through the process in order to help women with or people with disabilities, restraining orders, because a lot of women say it's a little too late after the fact. He stayed in the night, and we ain't get no therapy that night about when it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And
So you mentioned that, like, when they're brought into the station, they give their statement and all of that. They're given resources at that time to
okay,
reach
good.
out for help, so somebody can help them or show them how to do the paperwork. But of course, they have to reach out. Yes, if there was a social worker around at the time, some of these things are happening at 2 a.m. They may not have the social workers on staff at that time, but they could be. And so it's possible that somebody could help walk them through it. I do know with hospital social work, and I have done that work. Oh, we are there. We are there
Okay.
24/7. There is somebody at the hospital. So if somebody's actually gotten hurt, there will be a social worker that comes in, talks to them, with this domestic situation, and gives them all the paperwork, and will walk them through it if they are ready. But if they aren't willing to, or if they want more time, we can't press but so much, but we can give all the resources in the world. And so that the hospital is usually that zone where we would have more jurisdiction, and they're going to be more of us there than at the actual police department. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's talk about therapists in the homeless.
Okay.
Okay. Let's think about the high level homelessness that's in America, and the need to have is it that you think therapy, I'm in this to me, I think if they go into homeless shelters and stuff like that, there should be somebody there to be there to work with them. Is that like a specialty that therapists can be part of, that the homeless population, and be at the shelters when they come in, and at least be there? You think that's something that would help me understand
Social
that?
workers are all over the homeless work and the shelters and the services. And so most of the time there are some social workers, even clinical mental health social workers, because social work it can be clinical, but it also can be administrative or a macro practice. And so I've actually worked with the homeless population before, as you shared with the shelter. I worked in Baltimore, and God bless, I will say God bless the city of Baltimore as well as DC. There's a huge homeless population. So there are a lot of services for people there. And so people do get mental health services. They are connected with a counselor. They're also connected with a social worker or somebody else that helps, a case manager that helps them get as many services as they need. And it is a huge area. It is a hard area to work in, because the people that work there are going to see a lot of trauma, a lot of sadness, a lot of sad stories. And it's a hard area to say, I want to, I want to have a success story, right? You want to help people. And so if you don't see many gains, or you see the person going through the same thing over and over and over again, they've got evicted another time, or their family members won't help them out, or they lost another job and they've got to go back to the street, or they have to come back into the shelter. It is a hard cycle. And in that work, it can be very rewarding and supportive of the people that are suffering through homelessness. But we see a lot of mental health challenges as well, especially when we don't have facilities that are equipped to help them more long term or more intensively, case managers to help them figure things out, and live life successfully. They're going to unfortunately fall into that homeless cycle sometimes.
Oh yeah. One of the things is something that Mark was saying is, how often do we hear about folks who should have had therapy after the fact, after something happened? The warning signs are there, but no one did anything. It was like, okay, we're gonna talk to the person, we're gonna do something. And I know you can't fix everything in 45 minutes of talking, but I just like the fact that we're educating people to say, we hear you. There are services out there. Let's try to figure out how we can maneuver around the system to get services. But at the same time, it has to be a win-win, where people want it and get it, and then we do something about it. For instance, if you know people having mental health issues and you are not certified with that, then turn them into the police officer. Can you turn them in? What can you do? And just try to help us do our part to be
Hmm.
safe. And
Yeah,
sometimes mhm,
I
that
kind
may
of
be
understand.
wrong.
You want people to get the help, but for whatever reason, they're not getting it until,
Mhm,
like you said, there are crises or things that happen. So I would say also that I think people are getting help.
mhm,
Um, they may not stay consistent with the help,
mhm,
and the, there's this. So I'll say this: we want people to take medicine, right? If a person has diabetes, it's good if they take their medicine so they keep their blood sugar low, right?
right,
They
correct.
get a choice. They don't have to
Mhm,
buy the medicine. They don't have to take the medicine. They can eat whatever they want, or they can follow the doctor's recommendations.
right.
Therapy's the same way. People may be prescribed meds. They may be suggested to have certain sessions, but it's not as likely to be mandated to go to therapy sessions for people unless they've committed a crime. The courts can't always mandate that. And so once they've committed a crime, if they have an addiction, if there's some other type of concern, they could mandate that they have certain court ordered therapy sessions, but those are usually time limited, short term.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so that's where we have different setups in school systems to help catch the kids who are struggling, to make sure they get referrals, to support them in the school if we can. And so some schools do have mental health therapy available in the school for kids, or an
Mhm.
easy access for the parents. And then, like I said, people get to choose. And so we have to really work on making sure there's no stigma associated with therapy. So, yes, these tragedies can happen, but we can't always say they might have had a mental health issue, because then people are going to be like, well, I can't go see a therapist because they're going to think I'm going to, go hurt somebody. Well, no, let's make it normalized that therapy happens, that most people go to therapy, that it's nothing wrong with it. And if we destigmatize it, then people are more likely to do something with it. Just like with diabetes, it's almost like it's getting to be a catchphrase. Well, I got to get my blood sugar down. I got to do this. I got to do that. And so people are used to it. They may not like taking medicine, but they see that it's helping them out, and then they're going to also educate somebody else. So same thing could happen with therapy. I'm going to tell somebody that, I've seen a therapist and this has helped me deal with my emotions and my anxiety, or I had to go through anger management and I feel much better now. I know exactly how to control my anger. And if you need help, you could also get help too. If we do that, especially in the African American community and the Hispanic communities, I think we could get a lot more support and services for people. And I normalize it with groups and organizations. So it doesn't have to be one on one. It can be a
Mhm.
group that people go to, a support group, a group to talk about concerns that people have towards COVID, or with returning to work, any type of topic. And so that's a way to get people in to understand what the process is and not make it such a stigma.
That's a great way to talk about that, because when you say that about diabetes, I say, yeah, because we normalize diabetes. We do, and people are like, oh no, I can't have that sugar. No, no,
Hmm.
no, can't eat that. Or what I need to go to get something different or eat something different. And there's a
Right.
question that Mark came out, is how often are we as minority fearful of therapy? And the reason why is because of the history of
Mm.
therapy for minorities. So speak some more. You talked about that a little bit, but speak some more about how to get the Black and brown population past that fear of going to
So
listen to.
getting people to talk about it, having families talk about it. Everybody's got a cousin, and uncle, or auntie. Something's happened, right? Now I'm saying something. It could be alcohol, drugs. It could be mental health. It could be a divorce. It could be domestic violence. There's something. And in our community, we keep things silent. We don't talk about things outside the household. However, a lot of that information is not helping us, especially when it comes to health. We have the worst numbers, according to health numbers. We're 3 times more likely to die in childbirth than anybody else. That shouldn't be the case. So we've got to talk about these things amongst ourselves and normalize it and make mental health something that's I would say, an easy conversation. That
Right. Mhm.
it's just like I would say, I'm going to go talk to my pastor, I should be able to say, I'm going to go talk to my therapist. Should be easy. Me and my husband, we're going to go see our couples therapist this week because we've been doing good and we want to be able to make sure that we stay on the right track. That's how it should go. Not that you've shared all your dirty laundry. Nobody needs to know that. However, you share that you've gotten better, that things have improved for you, that this therapist helped clear your mind about a lot of different things. And now you've been able to get that promotion. We've got to talk about it in those formats. And then social media helps because everybody's on it all the time. And then we also have to make it affordable. Our community, we're fearful of a lot of things. We don't want to be a guinea pig on research sometimes. We don't want to tie into this. And we're worried about what people are going to write about us. However, we've got to be able to check in for ourselves. We have to.
Oh, that is so very. It's almost like we need to be on these speaking tours, talking about mental health and normal. Just like when you go, okay, we're going to have every time they say we're going to have a health fair, they do diabetes, they do blood pressure, cholesterol. Where's the mental health person at? Somebody get them over there too. I'm glad you just said that because I thought about you don't see that there, but we give me a blood pressure, give me a high, give me that. But that should be included.
I've been trying to do that as an agency, trying to get into as many health fairs as we can. And some of them are, inviting us, some are not. But I also try to make it as interactive as possible. So I will bring coloring books. I will bring paint. I will bring stress balls or whatever I need to bring so that I can show people just because you come in the room doesn't mean we're talking about doom and gloom. We might be talking about how to prosper your life. We might be talking about how to increase your stamina to be able to, get to the next level of different things. It does not have to be, we are talking about tragedies or crises all the time. And so if we can do more of that and we get invited into those spaces, I know there are going to be different clinicians that want to come and we want to share and we want to continue to help. And we have to utilize places that already have us there, so to speak. So the churches, the schools, the universities, we've got to be in there. And there's a few foundations that actually offer free therapy. There is the Loveland Foundation and the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation. They both offer vouchers for free therapy. Now, Loveland specializes with just mainly women, but BLHF will help with men and groups as well. But the BLHF Foundation is founded by Taraji P. Henson, and she's put together a new campaign where she's going to be taking these, I don't know what they're called, but they're like these self-help wellness pods to these different HBCUs. And so it's basically a whole little unit. I want to say what are those things? The truck things, the back of the truck.
Right. I need to talk about the med clinics like in the back. Because I've seen
so they're going to take those, the hubs, place it there. They're going to put pods in, music, all kinds of health and wellness. And it's all geared around mental health. All geared around mental health. And I was like, we need more of that so that it doesn't seem so stigmatizing and so ostracizing. Make it normal.
We talk about preventive heart disease, preventive diabetes, preventive cholesterol. We always talk about you get your wellness checkup and you can be prevent. We need to start talking about having some preventive mental health issues. What can we do to prevent that, please? Because I just thought about that. Some of these corporations say, if you do this for preventive health, you get so many points, and you can go shop in a book and get some stuff. I'm like, well, why can't we do preventive mental health?
Yeah, those are a lot of times based on metrics. And so they want to make sure they have less people with diabetes because they're expensive to cover. The middle part, they don't really have, they just have a little coaching, and they do have employee assistance programs. So some people will have that, but there's no incentives. It's just a free session. It's not like you're going to get extra points or a discount on your insurance because you go to a therapy session. But I think that's a great idea. I think it absolutely is.
And I want to share this with our audience. Therapists have therapists. Therapists talk to therapists. Just in case you didn't know that. They're just like, I got to unload some of this stuff also. So just like coaches have coaches, therapists have therapists, doctors have doctors. Yes. So we need to look at this as preventive health, not, oh, there's something so wrong if I can't tell nobody that I went and talked to somebody. If you need to go talk to someone, call Renee. Renee, give us your website, your telephone number, how to reach you again. And we thank you for coming. We definitely want to have you back because we have a lot of great questions. I'm going to send them to you so you can be able to have some information. I'm going to figure out, Mark, if you can copy these comments in the private chat, I appreciate it because I want to send that over to Renee.
Will do.
So how do we reach you?
So our website is renewed-strength.com. Real simple. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Renewed Strength LLC. And our phone number is 919-891-0016. And one thing that's really nice about our practice is we have sessions from 7 to 7 days a week. So there's a clinician that works every day of the week. And so we try to be as accessible to the growing population and the working world as much as we can. So if a person needs a 6 o'clock appointment, we can usually accommodate that. May not be, the specific therapist that they wanted, but it could be somebody else that fits their time frame. Mm-hmm.
For all of us like myself that need that 7 a.m. before we go see the world, we could go into our therapy session, get it off before we go see the world, to take care of all of y'all that's going to try to do that to us throughout the day. We could go ahead and vent our little stuff, come out and say, y'all be like, why are you smiling for? You just don't know I got my shot of therapy this morning. I can deal with y'all the rest of the day. Renee, I thank you so very much, especially the fact 7A to 7P is so very important. That's Absolutely. So very important. 365 days a year, we need you on the holidays.
We do take some time off for some holidays. We've got to take some holidays. Okay. Self-care.
Self-care. But they have a recording that they'll let you know where you can go.
Yes, ma'am.
But just to know that you could call on Sunday is so very important. On Saturday is definitely, sometimes people cannot do stuff during the weekday, but they can still away on the weekend to have that conversation, that private conversation. I think is so very important. I want to thank you so very much for joining us today. And I cannot wait to see you on a speaking tour talking about this preventive mental health. It's just like diabetes, heart attack. We're going to prevent this and get you okay, so you be able to go talk to somebody, so you be okay with yourself. Thank you so very much, audience. What can we say? Give Renee. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, no problem. We'll see you next week. As always, Mark, thank you for being the producer of our show. We thank you so very much. We are in 200 countries. 52 states, just in case you did not know that, in the United States of America. We are on 5 different platforms, so you can find us. Just Google us. Have a very good night, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.